Cool, we're rolling.
Right on.
How are you? How are things treating you?
Not bad, man. Just working away, trying to figure all this out in this crazy time.
Yeah, it's been quite the acclamation for musicians in general, and I mean everybody's kind of having to redefine themselves. Um,
Yeah, pull back a little bit. It's kind of nice though. You take a break. You get caught up in the whole show routine thing, and you don't really take a second to breathe and refocus. So it's kind of nice, but sucks at the same time.
yeah, what are some of the other positives from it? From like the all the space that you're giving? What's happening that's good?
I don't. Well, I mean, I've been kind of at this for going on like 15 years, so and pretty full forced. So this is the first real break that I didn't choose. So it's kind of forced me to kind of be in a mind space of, well, how do I make this right in my head
Mm,
creatively? And, it's allowing me to really refocus on what's important in my life, like my family. It was really nice to spend time with them. But a lot of it, just being able to take a step back from the big picture of the music world and say, okay, well, what's important in that? You get caught up trying to chase the dollar, and that's not really the important part of it.
yeah, so what are some of your musical goals that you're realizing, or like how are you? What's become new priority or old priorities that are resurfacing?
Well, it almost it takes it back to like the garage days, when you're trying to like really hone it out and figure it out. Um, but it's like going back to square one in a sense.
Yeah.
When you're talking about, you could go out and play if you were allowed to, but you're not allowed to, in a sense. So you're just kind of alone with your own tunes again, like it was in the beginning when you didn't know how to book a show and you didn't have a following or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's been nice to just kind of tear it down to the ground and go, okay, what's important? Is it important for me to chase the dollar and try to make a living out of it, or do the shows that are the most important to me
Hmm.
as an artist?
Yeah.
Because you get into that bar scene, and then the next thing you know, you're just doing 3 hours of covers and an hour of your own stuff, and it takes all that creativity out of it.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, it sounds like it's super fulfilling to be working on your own original music. That seems
Hmm.
a priority. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a priority in the beginning, and somewhere I just kind of lost it. I mean, I spent a long time with Sawtell just doing originals. We didn't do covers.
Yeah.
and and then I kind of went out on my own, and then realized that I got a better reaction if I played, some Skinnerd or something somebody knows. And then I fell down into that hole of just, I kind of stopped writing for a while, and that was not okay. So this is almost a blessing in disguise to be able to be alone with my thoughts again and not be distracted as much.
Yeah. That's cool, man. You released a record under your own name, right? Ghost, was that the name of that record?
Yeah, that was the first record,
Okay.
going solo.
Okay.
And we went down to Muscle Shoals to do that one at Fame Studios, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So just a big learning curve.
The first record. So you're implying there's a second one. Yeah. What's your discography like?
Well, after Sawtell, it went Ghost, which we did, I think, 8 songs on that.
Yeah.
And then I've just been releasing singles since.
Cool.
So my first kind of got back onto the recording thing after a couple years of playing out and about. Took some time to record some tunes I was working on, and the first one was Freight Train,
Yeah.
which I released earlier this year. And then back in June, I released a song called Rambling Kind of Man that my uncle wrote back in the 70s.
Cool.
And my dad recorded it in 1988. And then I put my own rendition on it. So it's kind of nice to do a family song.
Yeah, that's neat. That's a cool story.
Yeah.
Um, let's go back to the beginning. Like it sounds like
Okay.
the whole like writing and working on your own material has been a priority since like the when you started. What got you into music? Like what got you into writing? That's fairly specific. Oh,
Yeah. I don't talk about it very often, but or don't get the chance to talk about it very often. But back when I was in high school, I had a friend that passed away, and he was the kind of guy that would always dare me to do something I would never do. Kind of, being a teenager, you have this ego of, that I'm not going to do that because that's not cool, or whatever you put in your mind when you're that young. But when he passed away, I remember him daring me to do stuff all the time. So I just kind of dedicated my senior year of trying all the things that I said no to. So, and one of them was choir, and your dad played a big hand in my music today. If it wasn't for him, I don't think he would have, I didn't know I could sing. So, you know, he brought me in for a little audition, and next thing I know, a senior, first year in choir and in social airs and concert choir. And it was a big stepping stone for me, but I immediately started writing when I found out that I could do something like that.
Yeah.
And I had all these things to say, and I was just trying to figure out how to put it down. And it became more of a therapy thing for me as, you know, a younger guy trying to figure things out in life. And, you know, it quickly became that. I leaned on that to kind of get through my hard times
Yeah.
and be able to get them out of my head.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's cool, man. It's medicine for a lot of people. You know, music is unique in the sense that like I can take it and it's good for me, and then sharing it with somebody else can be good for them too. You know, it's like
Yeah.
it's
Well, I learned really quick when you start writing that's the trick with music is you don't spill all the cards all at once, because then you ruin it for a lot of people. You know, you write knowing that other people are going to put their own story to this. So if you give them too much information, then they can't put their own story to it. You've kind of spilled the beans and told the story already. So being vague early on in my writing was kind of important, because I didn't want people to know it was me that I was talking about.
that's cool, man. That's a great perspective on it. Okay, so I mean, yeah, it sounds like right away you had like this sense of voice that you were really comfortable with using and like expressing yourself. Did you find yourself modeling after other musicians? Who were you listening to? What was influencing you?
You know, when I first started writing music and playing music, I was really into Jason Mraz and John Mayer, kind of that, you know, tween age type music.
Yeah,
But mostly feel good, you know, the stuff that talk about love, talk about stuff that hurts, painful stuff. And what I found out that I was actually writing more sad songs than anything else, because they're the easiest songs to write. But that's kind of how I modeled off the very beginning, was more of a John Mayer type approach.
yeah. What about now? What are you listening to now? What's got your attention these days? What music is important?
Well, you know, I mentioned that I didn't know I could sing until my senior year, but I did grow up in a musical family. I just my dad was a country singer growing up. We lived in Nashville when I was a young kid, and I just didn't want to be him. So I never thought it was a possibility. I didn't know that I was going to be, you know, decently good at it. And I kind of ran from it for a long time when I was a kid. So when it came, it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks when I first started playing. So I had all this stuff to say. But yeah, I just, you know, moving on to that, I ran from my dad's style of music, which was country music, for a long time. I, you know, was more into rock, more into this indie scene, you know, Death Cab for Cutie type stuff, and, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
putting my hat into that. But now that I'm older, you know, married and have a kid and everything else, I connect really well with country as far as my day-to-day life.
yeah.
So I've kind of taken up that country torch and kind of doing my own spin on it with some of the different influences that I've had and brought with me throughout the years, and comes up with a pretty unique sound. So
If you were to like say one record that's like really, really getting you going right now, what's like, yeah, what's the most profound thing you've listened to in the last month or so?
you know, I've been really into Daryl Scott, which is a songwriter from Nashville, or out in the Nashville area. But he has this record called Aloha from Nashville.
Cool.
And he's a very eccentric writer, and a lot of his stuff's pretty out there, but he's written some pretty amazing heavy hitters, like It's a Great Day to Be Alive that Travis Tritt did. He has a song called Uncle Lloyd, which right now a band that does their song is the Steel Woods, and they've been kind of rising up in the ranks. But he's awesome, prolific songwriter, and I've just been nerding out on him for the last 6 months.
Yeah, that's cool. So you're mentioning that this guy is like writing and then other people are performing his music. Is that like his primary thing? Does he write a lot of music that other people are playing?
Yeah, he's kind of, I mean, you being a musician, you kind of know how things work. There's a lot of songwriters out there that don't go out and perform, but he kind of does both. So I mean, he'll put out records, and then next thing you know, other people are doing his song and making them bigger, um, which is cool because I relate a lot to that. I have no problem if someone came up to me and said, "Hey, I really want to do your song." I'd be like, "Yeah, that's great. Do your own rendition of it. Just make it your own." And so that idea is, I guess, something that I'm trying to strive for
Yeah,
as an artist,
cool.
is that and it's really easy, when you are an artist, to kind of, I guess, hoard your ideas. One thing that Muscle Shoals kind of taught me when I was out there was that, you might have a great idea and it might be solid right off the bat, but let's see how far we can take this thing with how, different minds into the room and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I'm, kind of open my eyes to that. But I love that approach. Write music for yourself and then let other people do it if they want to.
It's neat how, like, yeah, it is a very much a collaborative experience, and there's different. I feel like a lot of the music that's being produced now, we've kind of glorified these musicians that record all the instruments themselves. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just like I had an artist describe it to me once. I was playing with this woman who went by the name Karma, and she talked about how when you hear somebody that's like playing all the instruments, it feels like they're all screaming at you in the same voice. It's just one blaring opinion on the idea. But like you're talking about like having like fertile ground in like multiple perspectives on the same idea. Uh,
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. It's an interesting deal. I mean, music is very much a dance, and it looks weird when one person's out there just, getting a freak on in the middle of the dance floor.
Right.
So, if you add multiple people in there, it's not as weird. It feels more human.
I love it.
So,
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, cool. Let's delve in a little deeper here. Like, what is music? What makes music different than noise? Or like, is bird song music? Like, what is music?
that's a tough question.
Sure,
um,
but there's no
uh,
wrongs. It's like,
there is no wrong answer to it. There is, music just is, um, down to going all the way to a cosmic level. When you just hear the hum of space on a microphone, that's music in a sense. So using frequency there's almost a psychological aspect to it, using frequency to make somebody feel a certain way or change their mind. Right now is a great example of, the world's kind of going to crap. And it's times like this where music, I think, plays a really important role. As musicians, you have the power to change people's minds with just frequency, not even words.
right.
So it's, but you just got to find the right tune, I guess, the right frequency.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
it's interesting that you point that like music is like it carries like emotional or mental influence without even words, right? We don't need
yeah,
it's not like we need to have English or like I guess I've even experienced like Latin American music where it's like sung in Spanish and it's still like emotionally moving despite the fact that I don't understand what's being said. It's just frequencies at that point.
yeah. I try to put that into my songwriting too as well, of the idea of that the music's already saying something. So if you write down, say you're using G, C, and D, and you're putting them in a certain, focus or certain frame, it's already saying something.
Mm,
And as a songwriter, it's your job to pull it out and make it stick. Um, so it's almost this thing that's already exists. It's already there. You're just kind of framing it
yeah.
in a sense. So
Neat. Yeah. Um, okay. You mentioned it a bit how like music is important to society in times of like tribulation like this, where we're all under so many different exterior stressors. Um,
yeah.
like music, I'd be interested to hear you talk about like how music, like live music is good for society and what we're missing out on by not being able to witness music as groups of people right now.
Well, it kind of comes down to the whole psychological aspect of it. I mean, obviously we live in a day and age where technology is king, and if you want to hear a certain song, you can turn it on. That's fine.
Right.
But that's not, it's different from the sense of being out in a live show, saying you're at a festival and there's thousands of people there listening to one song at one time.
Yeah.
And there's a certain, I think, science to that that proves that helps people get on the same page. Yeah, it just sucks that this big epidemic is a pandemic. It's something that, you know, it's not healthy for us to be in big crowds right now and be able to think as one and share that experience with one another. And there's a certain psychological part to that we're missing right now. And I think that's playing into a lot of the chaos that's going on.
Yeah,
So.
I would agree with that. What do you think? So like at this point, like the pandemic is kind of forcing us to evolve and to adapt. Like what do you think? What do you think the future of like live music is going to look like after this? Like how are we going to recover? What's going to happen?
Yeah, it's hard to say. That's kind of one of the questions I've been asking myself ever since we were told that we couldn't do it anymore. And you know, it's, you know, I can imagine, you know, possibly I could have my ideas, I guess, but you know, I see it being a very slow go back, because it's not, we've allowed this to become political. And I think music is something where there should be no place, in my opinion, and other people might feel different, but it's kind of a safe place. It's neutral ground. It's Switzerland, you know. Politics doesn't belong in it. It's all about love and feeling and everything else. So getting back to it, I think, is going to be a rough go. It's going to take a minute.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like there's been a lot of people who have tried to like adapt strategies either by streaming online, you know, they're trying to stream performances, or I mean, it seems like most of the ensembles that I've been focused with have been like focusing on recording, trying to generate new material. It's just interesting to see the art like almost go introverted, and like and to be honest, most of the like the output of the art, the streaming of shows seems to like have such I don't know, such a minuscule effect in comparison to live in-person things that like we kind of have to reorient ourselves.
Yeah, and that kind of goes along with what I was saying in the beginning of our chat of, you know, being able to take a step back as an artist or as a musician and focus on being selfish about it for a minute. You know, getting back to square one, and you know, you spend all this time being on the road, playing countless shows, just putting, you know, the goal is to put a smile on somebody's face and change their day.
Yeah.
And it's very, you know, giving. You're always giving. You're always performing. You're always doing something for somebody else. So being able to take a step back, refocus, and regenerate some new material, going into the studio, sitting down and just writing a new catalog or creating a whole new set list, even if you're not a writer and you're just a performer of songs, you know, taking the time to get creative with it.
Yeah. Cool. Right on. So like speaking of creativity, like the creative process, like are there any tricks that you use to get into your flow state where you're writing? What do you have any routines in regards to that?
That one's a hard one because it's always different.
Yeah.
There's no set. One of my favorite, I guess, quotes was when Johnny Cash was asked the same question a long time ago. You know, what's your process? Can you just sit down and write a song? And he said, no, you can't. You got to go out and live life and go do something. So if I go on a walk and go fishing for a day, maybe I'll write a song that day. So
Yeah.
it's inspiration, you know, at least for me anyway, is similar. Like I'm not going to say I can't because I've done it before, but just sit in a room and say, okay, I'm writing a song right this second,
Right.
you know, and I'm going to pick this topic and I'm going to write a song with it. And I can do that, but it's missing that that factor of being emotional, because I'm not attached to it if I'm just forcing it.
Right.
So to really just write something that in my eyes hits it out of the park, I got to go live life a bit and hang out with friends and have a drink or two, or go fishing or go on a walk, you know, even simple stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find it much easier to talk autobiographically when you start writing? Is it more often that you're writing about your own experiences, or do you ever take like external influences and try to like capture those essences, frame that?
You know, it's so much easier to write about yourself because you know the answers.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good technique to, I guess, practice about writing somebody else's story
Mm.
or being creative enough to fabricate something. You know, like I've written a song before, it's a long time ago, but I was just watching the news and this kid got shot and he died in the hospital. And it just kind of inspired me to write the song called Show the World, which was on the first Sawtell record. Um, it wasn't my story. It was just somebody else's that I felt like it really connected with me at the time.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, to answer the question in a short, short kind of frame, it's a lot easier just to write about myself
Yeah. That makes
or
total
something I've gone through.
for sure. Yep. Cool. Yeah, it's I keep wanting to go back to this. You said it really well earlier. Like you talked about being vague and how like when you have the opportunity to talk about something that you yourself have experienced, if you can craft it in such a way that it's open-ended so that the listener can have their own experience with it, their own like subjective experience. Um,
Yeah.
that it just it's very well crafted in the sense that like I think that that enables you to reach the most amount of people rather than, as you said, like playing all the cards or like spilling all the beans. um
Yeah.
so like at that sense, like okay, so like we're having like this ability to connect with the listener. What I'm kind of curious about is like you talked earlier about how frequencies like gave particular emotions. Like we can make somebody feel a certain way or like influence their mindset by like what we decide to do as musicians. What I'm
Hmm.
curious about is like, is this subjective? Like at the point that I play like a major chord, like does that have like a given, like is that a human thing? Does everybody like experience that kind of sensation to like some, or is music subjective? Like,
I believe it is,
cool.
because, you know, frequency is effective. Like if you were taking it down to a scientific level of frequency and how it affects different things, it's like even down to, you know, having two plants in separate rooms and one of them you play classical music and the other one that you play metal. You know, not putting down metal at all. It's a style of music, but if you look at it, the plant grows differently,
Right.
um, and that's crazy if you really think about it. And there's a lot of proof in that. So I think it's subjective to a certain, you know, a certain point. It's subjective, but I think majority, as a like if you look at the crowd psychology of it, I think it's pretty solid in the sense.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. I mean, it just like, I think that that like enables like the thought of taste. Like at that point, certain plants may like to grow a certain way because of metal versus classical.
Hmm.
Like it's interesting that like at the point that it's subjective, then you can like, you enable us to have taste and just like at that
Hmm.
point I can like this, but not necessarily feel good about listening to that. Um,
Yeah.
I don't, it's just like at that point, it's like, I want to touch on pop music because like at that point, like pop music
That's,
kind of like trying to like there again like hit as many people as possible. Like it's not necessarily
yeah.
a genre, right? Like what's your like what yeah, what's your insight on pop music? What how does that fit into this?
I was actually going to bring it up. So to me anyway, and this is all obviously my opinion on things, but like to me, pop music is about as finite as you can get, as in as simple as you can get. And what they're doing is they're doing exactly that. They're like, okay, we want people to feel like they can go out and shake their ass for half an hour. How do we do that? Well, there's a certain template for that. There's
Right.
a certain there's a certain stylistic deal to that. You know, a certain approach, I should say. Um, you know, so not putting down pop music because obviously it's pop for a good reason, but I think that's your proof in the sense of frequency. Maybe isn't so much subjective as it is, you know, more of a law in a sense.
Yeah. Okay. So, but like pop music is shifting, right? I mean, like you
Yeah.
like what was popular in the 80s, you know, in comparison to 40 years, you know, later, like the pop music now, it's interesting. It's almost coming back full circle to like what was popular in the 80s in regards to like certain rhythms and whatnot. But like the production values of pop music have changed a lot. And even the chord progression, songwriting.
Well, I think there's an angst to it, a human element to it of not, you know, as generationally as we move forward. Obviously, we're moving. You know, like in our generation, we were pretty, you know, blessed to be able to be cultured in a way. You know, you have access to all these different things. You know, you're experiencing all these different types of people, types of cultures, and everything else. And now that, you know, we're kind of getting older, the next generation's like, no, your guys' music is whack, and we're gonna throw a different spin on it just to be human. And
Mm,
the fact that we want to be different. And I think every generation wants to be different enough that they force the hand of that.
yeah, yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Um, Okay, cool. So like we've touched on pop music and like genre a little bit. Like it seems like you're feeling most confident in country music nowadays, and that kind of like that sphere of genre. Would you say that that's where you have most of your experience right now?
Right now, yeah. I feel, and the reason why country is kind of resonating with me a little bit more as I'm getting older is that I feel like music today is struggling to be able to tell a story. So this is more the songwriter side of me, the artist side of me that's latching onto country because there is. And I'm not talking about top 40 country
Yeah.
on you know, pop country radio and stuff like that. I'm talking about like Cody Jinks and Tyler Childers and all these guys that are kind of underground, keeping real country alive. They're all storytellers, like to the core, like Willie Nelson type dudes.
Yeah.
And what I like about that is that there's it's not just music. It's it's intentional. It's not, there's much more to it. I mean, there's a story. There's something that's being said there. There's something that's even if it's not anything that you've ever experienced in life, you feel like you have a pretty good grasp on it
Yeah.
because of listening to that song. You're like, oh, I feel like I'm in that room with that person, seeing exactly what they're seeing. And this kind of goes back onto that whole being vague thing. You know, it's a touch and go. How do you give somebody as much information uh, to be able to give them that feeling, but also give them the feeling like they can put their own story to that and feel like that's them telling that story. And it's just, there's a lot of aspects to that whole storytelling mentality that I fell in love with.
Yeah.
Um, Especially being a songwriter like that, you know, I hate the idea of writing a song that's, you know, 4 lyrics long and it's just repetitive over a drum beat.
Yeah.
You know, that's empty in my opinion. So that's kind of why I've latched on to country music.
Cool. Okay. So like it seems like country music, like a huge portion of what makes it unique is like the facet of or the priority of storytelling. But like musically, what are some of the other defining factors like of the style of country music?
Well, for me, I've always been kind of a purist. Like I don't play electric guitar or anything like that. I play acoustic. I always have.
Yeah.
And I've always been kind of drawn to that acoustic, even bluegrass music, uh, for the simple fact that they're taking something that is very little and making it sound huge.
Mm.
So in country music, it's done really well. You have mandolin, you have guitar, you have banjo, and you have drums. But for the most part, you can take the drums away from it and just do bass and a bunch of acoustic instruments and still make this wall of sound
Yeah.
by being intricate, by being tasteful, and kind of making a dance out of it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's interesting that you mentioned bluegrass. You're kind of like there's a little bit of a boundary between the two of them, especially if you start pulling away the drum set. Like when you mentioned
Mhm.
bluegrass, drum set is kind of like the thing that kind of makes or breaks bluegrass. Like at the point that you have a drum set, I would say that we're probably not flirting with bluegrass as much. It's starting to turn into
No, it's just straight country at that point.
yeah. Okay.
And that's the big difference is that you don't have a the only percussion instrument you have is bass.
Yeah.
Um, so at that point, uh, once you put drums into it, it brings it into this either country vibe or southern rock, which they all kind of share the same ties, and they're it's like being in a room with a bunch of cousins.
Yeah.
So there's all these similarities to them but there's these hard lines in the sand of like, all right, well, we're bluegrass, so no drummers, and stuff like that. But and that takes it back to what I like about bluegrass is it takes it back to a simpler time, back when drums weren't a popular thing, and it was just acoustic guitars around a campfire, or acoustic guitars at around one microphone. So
Very cool. Very cool. Cool. So transition a little bit. I'm kind of curious as to like what have been some of the big challenges in being a musician? And I want to try and stay like keep the money side out of it. Like because everybody talks about how hard it is to make money, but like what is it like outside of that? What has been difficult about being a musician?
so besides the well-known issues that I think everybody knows about, right?
Yeah,
Is
basically.
what you're asking?
I mean, like, I don't know. I think that like some things may be less well known than you think, but like I kind of want to like the economics out of it. But like,
Okay.
yeah,
So just more or less this, I think the hard part for me as a musician has been, it's been a blessing and one of the hardest things I've had to do, but having a family and trying to do it at the same time.
yeah,
And that's not me saying that I wish I didn't have a family. My family's my whole world.
yeah,
Um, and I have a very understanding wife, and she deserves a gold star for sure. Um, but the hardest part is, you have this drive and this passion for something, then you really got to just go out and share it, and you really want to share it with people, but ultimately that takes you away from where you're needed the most.
hmm.
So it takes me away from my daughter, it takes me away from my wife, takes me away from my couch, which I really like. Uh, but it just takes me away from home. So as much as it's a passion, it's also a lonely place. There's countless nights where I'm, doing an acoustic show somewhere 3 hours away, and I'm just in the truck by myself, driving to the show, playing the show by myself, getting in the truck, coming back home by myself.
Hmm.
And so it's got this lonely factor to it, which is fine as a songwriter because it allows you to really think about different topics and how you're feeling. And it's really a good writing subject of just being away from home all the time. But to me, that's one of the bigger ones. The other one is just the psychology of, if you're a writer, if you're somebody that's an artist, you're always being told to, get your life together for some reason when you feel like you got a pretty good handle on it, because there's not a lot of people that understand what it's like to be a true artist and the mind frame that you're in, and it's just kind of hard to, I guess, expect the general public to understand that, because it's a blessing and it's a curse all at the same time. Because I don't know how many times I've lost good jobs just because there was an awesome show that paid me $50, and it's not what the general public would say was a very promising life, I guess, unless you make it. Then all of a sudden they forget about that.
How
But
can
yeah, right. But I think that's the hardest part, is just being able to stay focused. And one of the biggest challenges is stay focused. They, have that mind frame of keeping your eye on the goal. And like, this is something I chose. And I could take the easy way out and just quit and get a job or whatever. And just conform to whatever everybody thinks I should be. But, constantly battling that, I think, is a really, hard one.
Yeah, it's massive. I think that you're right in the sense that it's a path that isn't frequently followed, and so the people outside of that like trajectory have a hard time visualizing what success is looking like, even if it's like a small step in the right direction. And
Yeah.
they visualize you being on MTV or whatever, and it's like cool, you're traveling, cool, you made it right on. They give all the support if you get to that level, but all those stages in between are really unknown, and so they're hard to relate to. I think it's partially because like there isn't a. I mean, it's like if you wanted to become a doctor, like there's kind of a book written to show you how to become a doctor. You you work really hard to like get good grades in school, and then you go to a medical school, and then ideally you apply. It's like it's a fairly like well established path, um,
Yeah.
success. But like we don't like as artists, there aren't really books that have been written, to give us a clear sense of how to achieve our dream. It's so unique. Each artist kind of has their own vision of what success is, and so those
Yeah.
paths are really kind of vague. There again, it's just like it's hard to know where you're at in regards to like A and B, and for everybody else
Yeah.
outside to relate to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said it right there, though. I mean, being if you did have a textbook to teach you art, that's something like in high school and college and stuff. I never really understood like art class. Like you can't teach art. Like you shouldn't be able to just teach art. I mean, you can teach the fundamentals of it. But if there was a book written about how to make it in music, then it wouldn't be art at all. It would just be a career choice.
Right.
And I, as much as it sucks, knowing that is kind of a nice deal. It's pure in that sense. My intentions as an artist isn't driven by money, because there is no guarantee that I'll ever make money playing music, like really, like real money.
Yeah.
Not to take it to that monetary state, but it really drives the whole, whether something's successful or not. You could be successful just by being respected, especially on a local level.
Right.
And that's enough for a lot of people. They just want to be able to do what they do and know that people love what they do.
I think that's a good point right there, that like success looks different for everybody. And so like I think that's like one of the more important things, is to realize what success looks like for you so that you can aim properly.
Yeah. It's like taking a slingshot and just kind of flopping it up in the air, or a lawn dart for a better example. You're really trying to hit the target. But if you don't know where to throw to begin with, or, what you're passionate about, or what makes you feel like something that you're successful, then you don't know how to aim for it.
Yeah.
So I think that should be the first step for anybody that's even thinking about becoming a musician, is really get a good grasp on what you want out of it, because you can get really anything out of it.
Yeah.
If you're really driven by money, there's bands out there that I know that make tons of money, and they're just constantly playing always, which is great. And that's their drive, and that's what they're passionate about. But I know a lot of musicians that could care less about the money, and they just want to make really good music.
Yeah.
And not that anybody else wouldn't be making good music, but it's just, that's what their focus is just writing. So I think it's important to really just, your first step in anything really, even if it's not music, just, make sure you know what you're aiming for. Don't just blindly do anything.
Yeah. Any other bits of advice that have been really profound to you on like you on your path to music or with music?
Yeah, I think early on you get this idea of what music really is, and it's usually wrong. So like and I'm sure you feel the same way when you first got into music. If you look back 10 years about your thought process, it's totally different than it is now, because you realize that, oh, okay, maybe there's something about that wasn't really realistic, or I didn't expect it to be this certain way. You kind of, I don't know how to put it into words, but I think that would be the advice, is just whatever concrete thing in your mind you think about what the music industry is like, just kind of throw it out.
Yeah.
And just experience it, and just go every day, just get out there and just grind and just figure it out.
Yeah.
Don't think that, I guess, when you're younger, you kind of feel like you already got it figured out. Like, oh, I'm decently good at this certain thing. I got this, and I got this. When really you don't, you just got to go and figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there. Yeah. I think that like a lot of times it's people like talk about luck and whatnot. And I think that it's like, in order for luck to happen, you have to like be present in it. And I think it's what you're kind of testifying to is like, just like go and be present in it and experience it. And then like doors kind of start to open for you. And then you kind of have a path that starts to get, it's just bizarre because the path kind of gets laid as you take your steps.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, 100%. It's like walking out into a garden that you're just putting brick out to the first time.
Yeah.
Like you're creating the steps yourself. When I was younger, I guilty of this all the time. I would get really ramped up about a show that we're doing. We're getting excited about doing it, and it's a couple of weeks before, and I've already got this picture in my head of what it's going to be like, and then I get there, and it's nothing like what I thought it was going to be, and then I'm disappointed when I shouldn't be. I should be taken in that moment for what it is, 100%, and not have this pre-notioned idea of what it is, because you never know what's going to happen at a show. You never know who's going to show up, or you could be ramped up, excited to do a show and been promoting like hell for 6 months for it, and nobody shows up.
Yeah.
And you just don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the beauty in it too, though. I mean, you can learn a lot by just being present in the moment.
Yes. Cool. Speaking of traveling, like where have you found yourself enjoying taking your music to? Where have you been taking your music?
The last couple of years, I haven't gone far. I've stayed pretty much home on the West Coast. But I really enjoyed being in Muscle Shoals because it was, for example, it was one of those moments where I had this idea of what it was like or what it was going to be like. And then I got there and I was pleasantly surprised when it was completely different. That was a kind of a cool deal there because, no one likes reading a book and knowing what the ending's like. So it's kind of the same deal. But I really enjoyed Muscle Shoals just because it seemed like a place that everybody knows about, but it's kind of like a secret in the same time. There's so many amazing songwriters and producers and musicians all living in one spot, and it's not Nashville. Nashville's kind of created this name for itself. There's just nobody really wants to go there because it's a racket.
Yeah.
And Muscle Shoals is a small town. You grew up in Malala, and it's about the size of that.
Really?
Yeah, it's small. It's super small. And they've got all these world-class studios that have more #1 hits collectively out of it than anywhere else in the world. And it's just a small town. It's a country town by the river. And it's pure still.
Wow.
It's so that's my favorite place to take music anywhere is there, because when you get on stage out there, the general public listens intently because they don't know who's going to show up. They don't know who's going to be on stage. They don't know who that person is. So there's a general collective focus when somebody's playing something down there, where in the Northwest, it's really hard to get somebody just to listen to your song for the first time. And out there, people are searching for it. Like, oh, this guy's playing down the street. Let's go check him out. Let's go see what he's got. So that I love playing down there just because people love it and they don't care if they know it or not.
Okay, cool. I want to touch on like the Pacific Northwest. You're talking about like kind of this like distancing or like attachment from like listeners to like what is making it so hard to get people to want to listen to a song? Like, yeah, what's
I don't know what it is. I've been trying to figure it out for some time, but out in the Northwest, I don't know if it's something that was adopted from the grunge era of music, but just it's not cool to go out and go do something. Kind of vibe is what I'm getting out of it. Like everybody supports you, but nobody shows up. Like everybody loves what you're doing, but nobody shows up for it. And that's not everybody, but there are, for me anyway, a group of people that are always there, and I love it, because they feel like family at this point.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to get people to just put their beer down for a minute and take a listen. I think they're so used to, and this isn't putting down, cover bands, because I feel like the tribute bands and the cover bands are a lot of fun, and I feel like they're very professional at what they do. But they've created this culture in the Northwest, because you don't see a lot of that over in the South or other areas. But in the Northwest, there's a huge tribute band presence. And I feel like they've taken the background music to a new level in a sense. So like everybody's expecting to go to the bar they're not expecting to go and listen to music. They're expecting to hear some good music in the background and have a good time, which is fine. But as a musician, it sucks because you're going there and you have these stories you want to tell and you want people to engage and listen.
Mm-hmm.
And out here, it's hard to find those places. Not that they don't exist, because there's plenty of them out here that do exist. Venues that are very good listening rooms.
What's profound? Like, where's like when you think of like a room like that, what's an apex of that?
Bargeway Pub in the Dalles is a good one. And let's see here. There's a couple other places. Some random little bars and pubs that I've been to have been really engaging. One of them's out in Madras. There's this little alleyway that has this, it's like a tough shed with kegs in it. And it's a little tap house that they've made out of a tough shed. And that alleyway during the summer is a blast. You know, there's kids and families and there's food trucks and people just stop and listen and they stay.
Yeah.
You know, so there's these little pockets of places. I feel like the further you get out of the city, the easier it is to find those places, because it isn't an everyday. I think there's an overflow of too many people trying to do the same thing in an area.
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's true. I remember working with somebody and they were talking about the small towns treat you like rock stars. I mean, it's just like, I feel like it's kind of a funny way to put it, but it's true. Like you go there and they recognize that you aren't from there and they're interested, you know, at that point, you have more of their attention inherently.
Totally. Yeah. You're not a familiar face and they don't know your story. So they want to know, like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
You know, how'd you get, why are you in my small town out in the middle of nowhere? And immediately they're invested into understanding who you are. So it's inherently better to play a show like that than go and play a pub downtown Portland that 5 people show up that don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Excuse my language, but
you're all good. Yeah, this is good. This is a good conversation. Cool. What, just to kind of like, we're going to close it up, but what has been any media recently that's been really captivating to you? Any books, movies, podcasts?
You know, lately, I mean, not to kind of touch on the political side of things, but I've just been feeling numb lately. You know, I feel like media, and not talking about the news, but just like everything from Netflix to things that are out there and about are just so bombarding because they know that you're home. So it's just noisy. It just feels noisy right now. And it's hard to find silence. So I've been trying to spend some time just like when I get in the truck, driving home from work or to work or whatever it is. A lot of times I find myself just not listening to the radio at all, not listening to music at all, and just enjoy the silence.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting time right now, and I know it's not going to last forever, but I've been enjoying nothing at the moment, just silence or stepping outside and hearing the wind blow through the trees, and not to be, cliche at all, but I think getting back down to that, the simplicity of it has been my safe place through this time.
Excellent, Trent. Yeah, this is good. Yeah, I'm going to give you the floor. Is there anything that you want to say to anybody who's listening?
I guess, from one artist to maybe other artists that are listening, or other people that are inspiring to be artists, just do your thing and don't let anybody tell you that it's wrong, because what do they know?
Yeah.
So just be yourself. And I think there's a big humanity part to it of, don't try to be nobody that you aren't, because it never ends well.
Yeah. Yeah, Trent, thank you. This has been really nice. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Anytime, man. Yeah, of course, man. Thank you for inviting me to this. This has been really fun, and it's been good to see you. I haven't seen you forever, so it's good to catch up a bit, and it's good to talk music. One of my favorite things lately is more opportunities to talk about music has been fun. So
For sure. Is there anybody that you would recommend that I pursue to do this with, to interview?
Um, there's a couple people. Haley Verhoeven, she's in Nashville right now, but she's a Oregon City girl,
Okay.
and she's just in the thick of it musically. So reach out to her. She's great. My buddy Shane Brown, I'm sure you know who Shane Brown is.
Okay.
Yeah, Shane Brown's a good person to talk to always about music, about art, about anything really that has to do with what we do. Just because he's so obscure and outside the box about it, which is great. And then reach out to the guy that produces my music. His name's Patrick Tatro, but he has a pretty good handle on the whole production side of things. So like producing records and being in a studio and all that kind of stuff. I definitely recommend talking with him. He's cool.
Cool. Perfect, Trent. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Take care of yourself, and we'll stay in touch.
Sounds good.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.